Only in the gaming industry can you find creators saying that the customer or client doesn't matter. Cast your mind back to the turn of the millennium and what gaming was like back then. Well, if you were there anyway. If you weren't, what do you think was the thing that really set those days apart from the modern gaming world? Was it the difficulty of games and their stubborn refusal to handhold? Well, probably, yeah, but that's not the big thing the older generation of gamers talk about. No, what they'll tell you is that back then, when you bought a game, you got the finished product. Day 1 DLC, launch day patches, pre-order bonuses, they just weren't a thing. It was like going to the cinema. We saw a film, and at no point during the film did a message come up saying, pay X to see the next chapter. Compare that to today, when it often seems like developers can't be asked or don't have enough development time to finish their games before they punt them out into the world. Assassin's Creed Unity is a great example of that. Remember seeing characters walking without limbs, or turning their faces inside out while talking to each other, or glitching into objects so that you can become one with the toilet. Even better, remember when you did a leap of faith and flung yourself straight into the void, only to fall for ages, and then accidentally find the trigger for the ending cutscene? Yeah, that happened to me. It was like the game had a strop and went off sulking instead of doing what it was supposed to do. But then, I suppose it is French. And then, there's No Man's Sky, a game that promised the Earth. Well, about 900 million Earths actually. All of them teeming with life that was built from blocks of what can only be described as pure, concentrated wank. Did it even remotely deliver? Did it bollocks? And even to this day, the advertising still sells the game on that impossible dream that was never even remotely achievable. Basically, think Peter Molyneux, but even less capable of delivering a completed product. And so, what went on sale was, in the end, a game with such little depth it was barely even a game at all. Sure, you travel the galaxy, but what's the point? The planets are, when you get right down to it, just procedurally generated palette swaps of each other. Yay! This one's purple, and shits out a different flavour of cadmium when you prod it. Huzzah! Also, they're all sand. I hate sand. Oh, and the life that abounds on those worlds. Life that is best described as being what you get when you put a velociraptor's ass on top of a baboon's ass, with legs made from earthworms' asses and a pair of googly eyes made from eyeball asses stuck on the front. Basically, if you contracted meningitis, take an entire boatload of industrial grade hallucinogenics and fire up Spore, then you too could create a beastie for No Man's Sky. Earlier on I mentioned the now infamous bugs in Assassin's Creed Unity, and as anyone will tell you, bugs and glitches happen in all games, especially big open world games. After all, it's to be expected, right? That when you get a world as huge and as expansive as, say, Skyrim, that you will get bugs, because the devs simply cannot test everything. Well, what if that's not entirely true? Is there a game which proves that statement to be complete cobblers by being a vast open world with a ton of incredibly deep mechanics but without any game-breaking bugs? I won't beat about the bush. It's The Witcher 3. A game where friends tell me they have playthroughs over 100 hours long with no major bugs whatsoever. Is it possible that the whole idea of all open world games having bugs is nothing but a lie we've been sold by AAA developers to excuse them not being able to deliver a finished, polished game at launch? Now, of course, it's true to say that all games will experience bugs during development. I'm reminded of a story from the Witcher 10th anniversary panel. During the development of the second Witcher game, a game-breaking bug was discovered that caused the game to crash if a specific dialogue option was chosen. And that choice? The specific choice that made the game crash? Don't check trace. Yeah, it took them 6 weeks to even notice that one. The point is though, that they did notice it, and they did squash it before launch, because the real point is that CD Projekt Red actually cares and takes real pride in their work. They realise their fans are the most important people in the world because their fans pay their wages, so everything points to CD Projekt Red believing a very simple principle: something just being good enough is not good enough. That'll be why Cyberpunk 2077 was announced in 2013 and still hasn't been released. Then, like they say, you can't rush perfection. Of course, it's not just bugs that are affected by the combination of developers who can't be asked, publishers who want to fit a 3-year development schedule into 6 months, and apocalyptic amounts of hubris at every single level. It affects every aspect of a game's development, even down to the narrative, the story in the game. And now it becomes impossible to avoid talking about that game. The game that caused possibly the biggest backlash the gaming world has ever seen. Yes, I mean Mass Effect 3. You see, I fell in love with this franchise and sank near enough 200 to 300 hours in the first 2 games alone. It was one of the most well-realised game universes out there, maybe even one of the most well-realised universes in all of science fiction, filled with fleshed out 3-dimensional characters we deeply cared for. It took us to new worlds, and took video game storytelling to new heights, and then Mass Effect 3 happened, and the entire franchise was ruined by a little glowing bastard that someone considered to be just also artistic, and an on-screen message after the credits telling the people who made the franchise a success to buy the DLC. We'll go into the why of it in a future video, but for now, let us simply say that Mass Effect 3 stands as one of the best examples of developers' broken promises. You expected a full game with a complete, satisfying story for the many, many monies you paid for it? Oh, you sweet summer child. Hardly surprising then that a lot of people say that was the day BioWare died. Andromeda makes so much more sense if you think of it as a shambling corpse. But anyway, thank you very much for watching. I am AutomaTitan, and please remember that I require an always-on connection to the internet in order to install the latest patches, along with all the important bits my developers couldn't be asked to install before they shipped me.